You know how sometimes you read something and it makes you stop and think.
Yeah, definitely.
Well, that's exactly what happened when we came across this brand new research. It suggests that maybe just a single dose of a psychedelic compound could lead to these really surprisingly long-lasting improvements in cognitive agility.
Right, how adaptable our brains are.
Exactly. So,
Yeah.
okay, let's unpack this because, the potential here for understanding and maybe even treating some really difficult neuropsychiatric conditions, it feels like it could be genuinely transformative.
It really does. And this isn't about, the usual idea of just a fleeting psychedelic experience.
No.
This deep dive is all about a specific study, just published actually this past April. It's in the journal Psychedelics.
Okay.
And our mission for you today is really to get our heads around what this research found. How just one dose of a specific psychedelic affected cognitive flexibility in mice.
And the key is the lasting effect, right? Not just temporary.
Precisely. These effects stuck around for a while, which is, well, quite something.
So let's talk about cognitive flexibility for a second. What does that actually mean for you listening in everyday life?
Well, it's basically that core skill your brain uses all the time, like when you have to switch from one task to another.
Yeah, or change plans suddenly.
Or learn a new rule after you thought you knew the old one. It's fundamental, really, for just navigating the world.
Right. But it's also something that can be really challenging for people with certain mental health conditions.
Yeah.
So figuring out ways to maybe boost this adaptability.
Yeah.
It's a pretty big deal in research.
Huge. Absolutely. And the team doing this work, they're based at the University of Michigan.
Okay.
Led by Professor Omar J. Ahmed, he's the senior and corresponding author, and Elizabeth J. Browns, who was the first author, both in the psychology department there.
Got it. All right, so let's jump right in. What's the big news? What did they uncover that really, grabbed our attention?
Okay, so here's where it gets really interesting.
Right.
They found that a single dose of one specific psychedelic compound led to, significant and crucially sustained improvements in cognitive flexibility in these mice.
Sustained. And you mean how long?
Weeks. We're talking benefits lasting for weeks after just that one administration.
Wow.
So the big headline for you here is, this isn't just about some temporary psychedelic feeling. This study suggests one dose might actually kickstart lasting improvements in how the brain adapts, how it learns. That's pretty groundbreaking.
Weeks from a single dose. That's definitely not just a flash in the pan. Okay, so what was this specific compound they were using?
It's called 25-CN-NBOH.
Okay, bit of a mouthful.
Huh. Yeah,
No.
it is. But basically, it's what they call a selective serotonin 2A receptor agonist.
Maybe.
Think of it like your brain has loads of different keyholes or receptors. This specific compound is like a key that mostly fits just one, the serotonin 2A keyhole. So it mainly interacts with that receptor.
Okay, so it's targeted. They gave this to the mice. How did they actually test their mental flexibility? What did the mice have to do?
Right. So they used these things called reversal learning tasks. It was part of an automated setup.
Okay.
Imagine like a little game for the mice. First, they had to learn a simple rule. Poke a hole on the left, then poke one on the right, and do it within 30 seconds. If they did, they got a little food reward.
Left and right. Get a treat. Simple enough.
Exactly. That's the initial learning. They even had a little diagram in the paper showing it.
So where does the reversal come in? How did they test the flexibility?
Okay, so once the mice got good at that first rule, left and right, the researchers just flipped the script. Suddenly, to get the same reward, the mice had to poke the right hole first, then the left one. Still within 30 seconds.
Okay, so they changed the rules mid-game.
Precisely. And that switch, that's what really tests their cognitive flexibility. How fast, how well can their brains adapt to that new requirement? It's like, can they unlearn the old rule and pick up the new one quickly?
Makes sense. So what happened? How did the mice that got the psychedelic compare to the ones that just got like a saltwater injection?
Yeah.
The control group.
Well, the results were pretty clear, actually. The mice that got the 25-CN-NBOH, they did significantly better on that reversal part of the task.
Better how?
They showed greater adaptability. They basically learned the new rule, the right then left one, much faster than the control mice.
Okay.
And they were more efficient, too. They made fewer mistakes overall, got a higher percentage of the sequences right, and, ended up earning more rewards during that tricky reversal phase.
So they were just better at adapting. across the board.
Yeah, the data in the paper really shows it quite clearly how much quicker they were on the uptick with the new rule.
But the really, like, the mind-blowing part,
Yeah.
the thing that makes this stand out is how long these improvements lasted, isn't it?
Absolutely. That's the kicker. Elizabeth Brown's the lead author. She mentioned they saw these cognitive benefits for like 15 to 20 days after that single dose.
15 to 20 days.
Yeah. And Professor Ahmed also really emphasized this. He talked about the sustained duration of cognitive benefits. He suggested the compound might be triggering lasting and behaviorally meaningful neuroplasticity changes in the prefrontal cortex.
Neuroplasticity, that's the brain's ability to kind of rewire itself, right? Form new connections.
Exactly. Its ability to change and adapt. And 15, 20 days, I mean, that's a pretty significant chunk of a mouse's lifespan.
So this finding, does it connect with other things we know about psychedelics in the brain? It's not totally out of the blue.
No, not entirely. It actually fits quite nicely with some existing research, more at the cellular level.
Okay.
That research has shown that some psychedelics can actually promote structural changes, like new connections between neurons, especially in the prefrontal cortex, that key area for higher thinking.
Right.
But what makes this study really interesting and sort of novel is demonstrating these sustained cognitive benefits in actual behavior. You know, the mice were doing the task better weeks later, not just showing changes under a microscope.
So it links the cellular changes to actual improved thinking long term.
Exactly. It provides some pretty compelling evidence for that lasting impact we were talking about.
It really raises so many fascinating questions, though, doesn't it? Like, how is this happening? What's going on under the hood?
Totally. And the researchers themselves bring up some of these big questions, like, could these compounds, even from just one dose, maybe reopen what scientists call critical periods of brain plasticity?
Those windows when the brain is like a sponge for learning.
Yeah, precisely. Those times when the brain is particularly adaptable. And, what are the specific molecular nuts and bolts driving these long-lasting improvements?
And what about dosage? Like how much you give, how often?
Crucial questions. How do dosage and frequency affect this long-term neuroplasticity? Professor Ahmed actually brought that up specifically.
About giving multiple doses.
Yes, he highlighted the need to study that. If you give more doses, do the benefits just keep stacking up? Or do they maybe hit a ceiling?
Or could there even be, like, negative effects if you do it too often?
Exactly. Could there be downsides? These are really important things you need to understand before anyone even thinks about potential therapies down the road. It has to be done responsibly.
Definitely. Now, something else I noticed in the paper, they mentioned that both male and female mice showed similar improvements. Is that important?
Yeah, that's actually quite significant. Sometimes you see differences between sexes in these kinds of studies.
Right.
So the fact that both male and female mice responded positively here, it suggests that potentially whatever mechanism is at play might apply more broadly, which is, encouraging if you're thinking about eventual applications for diverse populations.
A good point. And it sounds like the way they actually did the experiments, the setup, was pretty advanced too.
Yes, they mentioned their automated behavioral task. It sounds like a really valuable tool they developed.
How so?
Well, it lets them test cognitive flexibility in a kind of high throughput way. They can test more animals, maybe more compounds, more efficiently.
So it could speed things up.
Potentially, yeah. It could really accelerate future research looking into different psychedelic compounds and how they affect cognition, faster development of potential therapies, maybe.
Makes sense. And just quickly, where did the funding for this work come from? Always good to know.
Sure. They had support from several branches of the NIH, the National Institute of Mental Health, Neurological Disorders and Stroke, and Drug Abuse, plus funding from the University of Michigan itself.
Okay, good to know. So let's try and pull this all together. If you had to boil it down, what's the core message, the main takeaway for you listening today from this deep dive?
I think the key thing is that a single dose of this specific psychedelic 25-CN-NBOH led to these lasting improvements in cognitive flexibility in mice, improvements that stuck around for several weeks.
Right.
It suggests these compounds might do more than just affect perception temporarily. They could potentially trigger enduring changes in brain function, changes that result in real measurable benefits in cognitive skills.
It really does shift the perspective, doesn't it? Away from just the immediate experience toward something potentially more fundamental about brain plasticity.
Exactly. It's not just about the trip, so to speak. It hints at the potential for a lasting shift in how the brain can adapt and learn.
Yeah.
And that leaves us with a really important question to sort of mull over, doesn't it? For you listening. If one dose can have such a lasting impact on cognitive flexibility, at least in mice, What other possibilities might this unlock for understanding how our brains adapt, how they learn, and maybe, just maybe, what future paths could this open up for supporting brain health down the line? It's a really fascinating area. Lots more to figure out.
Absolutely. A lot more to discover. And if you do want to dig into the specifics yourself, the study is titled Single-Dose Psychedelic Enhances Cognitive Flexibility and Reversal Learning in Mice, Weeks After Administration.
The authors are Elizabeth J. Browns, Tyler G. Eakins, and Omar J. Ahmed.
And it was published in the journal Psychedelics back on April 22nd, 2025. Definitely worth a read if you want to get into the nitty-gritty of the data.